Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Give Me God of War difficulty video walkthrough. This is the final boss fight of the game, and the final video of the guide. It is against Baldur, and he is the exact same as when we fought him at the beginning of the game. The only difference here now is that there is a giant that's going to do an ambient damage to the area that hurts both of you, and that Freya is going to be completely constricting us with all kinds of vines. And it leads to probably the most miserable final boss I've fought in a long time, because not only does Baldur have an insane amount of HP that you have to go through, but you spend half of the fight being annoyed by stupid shit. So the strategy I'm using is dead simple. I'm going to dodge his moves with the Amulet of Kvasir, and I'm going to punish him with the most damage I can do. The most damage at the moment is using the Executioner's Cleave. Whenever he charges at you just like that, if you press L1, you can stop it and counter it, and you will have the advantage in the cutscenes. And when you do this, he transitions into the new addition to this fight. So it's Baldur as we knew him previously, but now he's buffed. So because he's all powered up and icified, he gets access to some elemental additional moves, and now you can only hurt him with the Blades of Chaos. Well, you can use the Leviathan for specific things, like the runic attacks, but for the most, it wants you to hit him with fire. So at this point, you want to be using your running attacks with the claws, trying to get him trapped in the vines and not get yourself trapped in the vines, and we're just going to be repeating what we did previously. Whenever he does a move that I can effectively dodge with the right timing, I'm going to proceed to combo him. But I'm not going to be too aggressive here, guys. The one thing I learnt with my time with Baldur, that's unblockable, but it does no damage. It's whenever you hit him too much, it's a safeguard against being bullied. So it's really, really cool that it doesn't hurt you, because if it did, it would be way more frustrating. But one thing I found with my time with this boss is the more you try to attack him, the more he has a tendency of countering you with the dodge into the jab. And his dodge jab is not that difficult to defend against, but there are times when it can go through what you're doing. And I've not really figured out why it does this, but there are times when even with perfect blocking, he hits around your shield. And to completely alleviate that and not have any problem with it, just play a little bit more defensively. Only counter him when you know you have the advantage. And take it slow too. This is a slow fight, it's a war of attrition, it's annoying as fuck thanks to this garbage, and whenever he taunts you, I don't attack him when he taunts. The only thing I attack him with when he taunts is runic attacks, to make sure that they hit, and even then he can dodge them. Another thing, do not reflect any of these projectiles. When you reflect projectiles at Baldur, he dodges them and counters you, and you can get stuck in recovery frame animations at the end of your counter that you cannot dodge out of, and you cannot block, and he gets a free hit. So he's really cheesy with that shit. But all we're going to do is pay attention. Whenever we see the giant doing something, block it. Whenever we see Baldur doing something, dodge it correctly and then punish accordingly with your moves. Block anything you're not comfortable with, and know that that move just then, the move where he does the 3 zigzags and then the really fast kick, on the second phase of this fight, I don't know why, if you block it in certain circumstances, it still damages you. Even though it's not unblockable, it's technically, it's a parryable move, but for some reason, there are times when you block it, and there are times when it goes through your shield, and I don't know why. So you have to parry it safely to guarantee no damage in the second phase. I have footage of me blocking it and taking no damage, I have footage of me blocking it and taking damage, and it pissed me off because I couldn't understand what was different. But use the boy to perpetually be hitting him, and just acknowledge that it's going to take a while, he takes a lot of hits, you don't do any damage to him, he's incredibly tanky, and then just kinda deal with whatever he does, with whatever you've got, and hit him with as many runic attacks as possible because it's the most damage you can do. If you want to use Rage, it'll speed it up. That move just then, when he does the triple dash, if you're too close to it, he can mix you up and cross you up. It's really awkward. He can do things that get real funky if you're not careful. So my advantage and advice is try not to be too aggressive, and if you see him doing that move like that, instead of dodging it with one circle press circle twice to guarantee the iframes of the roll. Because when he's really close, it makes it tough. But that right there is when you counter the charge. All you have to do is press L1 when he's running at you, and then you will get to the second phase, and now in the second phase you have a checkpoint. This is the same as the last phase. The only difference is that Freya summons these scrubs to help him, and that instead of using ice, he now uses fire. And what fire does is it moderates his moves. It changes them slightly, but they're intrinsically quite similar. The grab you just witnessed, as long as you mash X to get them off you, will never damage you. It is the best and most balanced grab ever. And what it does in this phase is it makes it so that you do not have to worry about the adds. All you do is focus on Boulder. Focus on Boulder, ignore the scrubs, and what's the worst that can happen? They grab you, you throw them off, you kill them, you stun the others. There is one thing you need to be cognizant of when you get grabbed, is that if the game syncs up in that perfect bullshit way that they sometimes do, and anybody attacks the frame you were recovering, there's nothing you can do. It's just a free hit and it's a reset. But the strategy couldn't be more simple. It's exactly what we just did in that previous phase, but now he's on fire. And the area where it gets a little trickier is when he jumps into the air, he's going to do a slam that has two effects, and it has this rippling flame effect. It's very fast, and it has massive AoE, so getting caught in it is much easier than I'd like it to be, so be very careful. And then the second thing to be aware of is when he slams the ground now, instead of those icicles in that nice linear trail, he has this creeping fiery death that will track you quite slowly. And it's very dangerous because it's not too fast and it tracks, so if you don't dodge it accordingly and continue to move in an intelligent manner, you'll fall into it. Oh, by the way guys, just then, that is the only way to stop yourself taking damage when the game syncs up perfectly when you get grabbed by an enemy. I got grabbed just then, and I was recovering into Boulder's attack, so I activated Rage to give me iframes, and then I deactivated it to make sure I didn't take damage. Technically I use Rage, so if you're one of those people that's a stickler, for stipulations, then it breaches what I was trying to do in this fight, but it's a good example of a strategy that you can use. And it does look kind of cool. It's not quite as cool as the Devil Trigger activation, but it's pretty cool. Just then is why you should never ever reflect, because he does that. I got pretty lucky then with my dodge and I got him off, but if I'd not, that's free damage for Boulder. And this fight, as I've mentioned, is incredibly long because he takes no damage. And just imagine if I didn't have all this gear, just how much longer this would take. Incredible, right? That's going to be fun. But there's his double fiery jump. When you keep him at a distance, I find it's easier to react to the jump because it feels like to me like it gives you more time. Just then, guys, was what I just told you about earlier. He was too close on that for me to confidently parry it because I thought he'd go behind my shield. So instead, I rolled. And it's such a safe strategy. I love it. But this is the final chunk of his life bar. Oh no, there we go. This is it. So that's the counter to his charge. There's the axe throw into the wall, and here's the transition into a little bit of the cutscene fighting. So once again, folks, hold L1 to block him, duck him, start punching him, and then it transitions into the final phase of the fight. So the most frustrating aspect of this final phase is that the game starts you in Rage of the Spartans, and because I'm trying to do this without using Rage at all, I have to turn it off at the beginning every time, and it's kind of a nuisance. But this phase is a combination of both of the earlier phases without the adds. This is probably the easiest phase, because you've seen all of his moves, you know exactly what he's doing, and you've got a really, really good environment with not as much bullshit happening. There's no Freya grabbing you, there's no giant slamming the ground. This is about as close to being a nice fight engagement as it's going to be. And the gimmick here is he alternates now between both ice and fire, so you have to swap your weapons a lot. Whoever decided you can't change weapons while moving is not my friend, because that animation of swapping weapons where sometimes it seems to stop you is really annoying and has got me hit a bunch of times. There are times when it seems like Kratos does it just fine, but there are other times when he doesn't, and I don't know exactly what that is. I think it's when you're sprinting. I don't think you can change weapons while sprinting, and that's the problem that I have. But when he jumps into the air and comes down, he's going to leave remnants of the element that he is, and then he's going to change into the next element, and he's going to leave like 2 to 3 circles depending on the jump that he does. Those circles linger just long enough to be a threat, and if you attack him when he's coming out of the recovery for it, you will build up status effects while standing in it, so be very careful of being aggressive after he jumps, because it leads to some awkward situations. But here's the triple attack. That was a mistimed dodge, so I didn't get the Kavasa. There's his equivalent of those 2 icicles when he's in fire mode. And all I'm doing, guys, is I'm countering him with the Executioner's Charge. And then when I've got my... when I use my runic attacks, we're going to combo his tits off with the boy. And we're going to do as much damage as we can. And it's just a slow war of attrition against a boss you already fought. And I don't understand why the final boss is the same boss you attacked at the beginning. And I could understand. Do you see that? That is his counter when you get too aggressive. That is why you need to be careful with Boulder, because if you don't, it can lead to bad things. That's why I don't just wail on this guy, because I got hit a few times by his counter, and I just didn't want anything to do with it. You can usually block and parry and things and dodge out of it, but if you're in a move that is too long and too many frames, you're stuck. So it means that you have to limit what you do, and I never really want to do that unless it's specific and for a good reason. So I just don't bother. I counter-punch him. I Chuck Liddell him like the Iceman would. But there is the shield bash. Love that move. There's the jump. I dodge the jump by sprinting. You don't have to. If you're moving in a direction, either left or right, all you have to do is roll while still moving. As long as you're moving when it starts, you will move out of the area of its effect, and then you can just proceed to back up and back dodge and things and whatever you want to do. I sprint because traditionally sprinting gives me an advantage that rolling doesn't, because it tends to be faster and it enables you to do a running attack. But it doesn't really matter here because it's not going to give you the advantage I'm looking for. But it's just repeat ad nauseum, too much HP, not enough moves, and I didn't counter that one, so I don't think that this was what the animation would have been if I'd have pressed L1, because as you can probably imagine, I was quite on the edge of hoping I was going to get the recording, because I find this boss fight to be tepid, if I'm honest, and I'm always honest. But there you go, guys. That is God of War on its hardest difficulty. Congratulations, it's by no means an easy feat to make it through that game. I hope that the videos helped. I hope that you enjoyed the game. I hope that you're welcomed to the channel and you've checked out other things if you're new. The next project you'll be seeing, it's probably going to be the Dark Souls remastered run that I'm going to do to see if it's actually worth checking out again after spending thousands of hours in that game. So hopefully I won't be too jaded and cynical on my run. I hope to make it as fun as I can. And you might see more of this game, maybe some Valkyrie fights, something like that along the lines, maybe a challenge run if it ends out to be more interesting than I think it's going to be. But just stay tuned to the channel. Hopefully check out the live streams now I'm going to be able to do them, now that this guide is made. And I just want to thank everybody who makes this possible. All of my Patreon people over there supporting me when YouTube is quite tough, and all the people who take the time to watch, even the people who don't get these videos in their sub box, or the people that are busy themselves with life and playing the game and everything. You people are the life's blood of everything that we do here, and if it wasn't for you, none of this would be possible. So thank you for watching, and you take care now.